Goodbine, creator of the Adapt 2030 Mini Ice Age 2015 to 2035 video series. And good morning, good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are on this beautiful blue planet, this wonderful existence of a world that we have to share together. One people, one vibration to kick darkness out of our realm. So many changes over a week, and every time we have the program, it's always so many changes over a week. It seems that everything is sped up yet again. But the more the politics is shifting, it reflects 100% on the crop losses that are coming in now on the books, the yields being verified. So it seems to be really a 1-for-1 ratio. The more that the crops are lost in the fields and being booked in as that's not there anymore to feed the populace, the pendulum swings over to some weird political event to try to distract you from when the crop yield reports are coming out or the prices are talked about increasing. And it's really a never-ending barrage of, even McDonald's now can't get milkshake mixes or bottled drinks, canned drinks, bottled drinks in the UK. So I thought they had their own supply chains all the way down to raising the cattle after they cut down the Amazon rainforest. But you need to have a global tax on carbon, especially using it on the blockchain. And VeChain is going to be taking care of all of this good carbon data tracking and reporting. VeChain launches blockchain platform to encourage carbon data reporting, meaning that carbon credits are in play and they're going to be on the blockchain right along with the resetting economy, blasting us into evaporation of the dollar. And as we look across the sphere of interestingness, Afghanistan Collapse signals world nations to abandon the petrodollar. So that means anybody living in America, look out for hyperinflation like Weimar Germany as the something's coming home to roost, but I don't know what it would be. Nefariousness, worthless pieces of paper. Stack up your silver, stack your gold. Get ready, because here we go. Ransom Godwin with me tonight, 420 TV Freedomist Films. I do believe he's broadcasting live. If you want to check out the images that are going along with some of the stories tonight, I'm going to hop over on YouTube, and we're going to be broadcasting live right over on Ransom's channel. Ransom, I appreciate you joining me. You know, we're going to have a good go around tonight. We're going to talk about I can't say that word. Sorry.
Those words. Hopefully you can hear me.
The bad word. The IV word is a bad one.
Hopefully you can hear me clear. I got it all running through the computer finally.
Yeah, you might come a little bit closer to the mic.
There we go.
Yeah.
All right. Yeah, everything's crazy. So as predicted, you know, things started blowing up in Afghanistan right on time. And you notice they named a new boogeyman. It's like the ISIS something, ISIS K or something.
Yeah. Hey, can you come a little closer to the mic? You were perfect at one time and then you stepped away from it again.
Yeah, it must be Skype software. This is why I went to the phone, maybe.
Gotcha. All right. Well, everybody turn up your dial. If I talk, you need to turn it down. Ransom talks, turn it up. We're going to go.
All right.
So you're right. It was on time. And, you know, the resurgence of everything to have a new excuse for even more lockdowns, more security, more tracing, more cameras, more police force. Oh, wait, that was 9/11. My bad. But at 2.0, I guess, because everything's rocking and rolling again with the K, the J, the L, the M. And then it's going to be Al-Qaeda's XYZ, LGBT. I can't wait until they have, you know, rainbow flag turbans because they're so woke as well, right?
Right. Do I sound better now? I turned off the.
You sound great. Let's
okay.
Get the show, because yeah, you know, you hit it on the head. This was predicted. The more crop losses there would be, the more political instability would be put there on purpose to then have a reason for more lockdowns, more control on the citizens, more control to food access points. These seem to be dropping down lockstep, and no BS assessment. We lost 30% of the food on the planet this year. So You could see how this lockstep's going politically for more lockdown, more lockdown. And next year, if it's just as bad, we're going into somewhere you probably need to be growing your own food.
Yeah, I've seen that everywhere, all around the world. People used to talk about a prison planet. It's absolutely that now. I mean, you can see once free countries doing draconian stuff that was never imagined by the public.
Well, unless you look back in history and see every time we enter one of these grand solar minimums, the collapse of government happens anyway. It's just a part of the 400-year cycle. What are they going to do? I mean, governments all know this. The cycle's been repeated umpteen times in the last 4,000 years. So better connectivity today. Obviously, governments are going to behave a little bit differently and try to be the first civilization in history not to be set back by this cycle of the sun that reduces our crop production 80% across the globe over the next 3 years. So who's going to get the food? That's the question. Who is going to get the food?
You notice no one's really talking about that. We're only talking about possibility of war, and they have these lockdowns as the main topic. And people don't realize that just being locked down, you're also going to be locked down with no food. What do you do then? I mean, people are pretty comfortable right now thinking these are reasonable measures by their governments. I mean, there are a big group of people that think that. You can see them on the social media networks that cheer on all of these rules, but none of these people are talking about where's the food coming from if no one's working. I mean, this seems like deductive logic, yet you don't see that on any of the mainstream media channels at all.
Yeah, you won't. And the thing is, the distraction needs to be there, because once you know that the food is the center pivot point of everything happening on the planet, you would never want to really focus on the main cause of all these dots connecting. I mean, the dot connector truly is this grand solar minimum crop loss 400-year cycle that we're going through. Now, every economy is devastated across the planet during these times because the food production of a country is the actual value of the country's resource. So when we cut that down to zero, and then if nobody's working right now, we're repeating exactly what happened in the 1640s. All these countries stopped exports. All these people had no jobs. An enormous amount of population migration happened, and everything fell apart because there was no base to have a value of anything in the society. And we're going right back to that point now. I give it less than a year before the valuations in the way that stocks are valued at the moment and the way national sovereign debt is handled with fiat, it's going to have to be restructured, because if nobody's working, the food's not there, everything's hyperinflating, then how do you really have a value of fiat currency amongst trading partners?
Yeah, you can't.
You can't. And this is where it comes back into repeating history. So if you knew and you had studied history in any fashion or form going back every 400 years and seeing the resets, and I don't care if it's China or Central America or South America or Europe or North America, Africa, they're all set back lockstep. Knowing that it would be burned to the ground anyway, literally, infrastructure is going to shatter as we get these earth cracks. I don't know if you saw the latest one in Arizona, large earth crack, but the infrastructure is not going to hold up so well. Fiat currency is going to have no notional value to even base anything off of in terms of how it will be valued against labor, material resources, supply chain, et cetera, and production from a country. That will have, it'll be a juggling game of even trying to figure out who's producing what and which ships are sailing to which ports that are still functional. It's going to really be more of a guessing game than a streamlined flow that we used to have for the last, 300 years. So nothing that we know moving forward after this year is going to be, well, the way it was. So this great reset is just a good way to term it, saying, hey, elite no, 400-year cycle in the sun is going to completely rip our society to shreds, but they're not telling you. That's basically what their great reset is. And they want to keep the rules going. And the new monetary system will, so when this event finishes around 2035, they'll still have themselves in power. And in control of the money, by the way, both.
Yeah, and I'm sure you saw that the Japanese guy talking about the ivermectin and how they're going to start cracking down on that now that he even said that. But that's funny. You've been saying this all last year about other things besides food, like things that will keep you going health wise, and none of the mainstream media is talking about things like that either. Think about what interests they have. I mean, the things that they're pushing versus the things that they don't say a peep about kind of tells you exactly what they want the masses to do and what they want the masses to think. It's that you can only go through one source of life, and that's government, or what government deems. I was showing everybody the price hikes, and then also you see Biden trying to put a tax hike on all the small businesses that are now just about closed. So how can you continue to tax and eat the substance out of the public while you continually close them down and shut down distribution at the same time? And people just don't understand that that's happening, even though it's happening right in their face. They think, oh, well, we're just staying home. It's just temporary. We got to do everything for the greater good now. We got to wear a mask. We got to get our immunity from the authoritative services, if you know what I'm saying. And it's all going that way. And then you get these people that say common sense things, and then right afterwards you can see that everyone will follow, trying to demonize certain things. So you can see that silver and all of these other remedies are about to be really attacked by the powers that be, because people are just ignoring them and their mandates.
Yeah, I saw on the new infrastructure bill that to collect those taxes and essay those taxes against the individuals, they're going to hire 87,000 new IRS agents. What's interesting is they're setting aside $85 billion to hire all these people, and they expect to collect $800 billion, or a 10-to-1 increase over after the training, and put these people, obviously they're going to be targeted. Most of them are probably going to be of a single political affiliation going after the other political affiliation. And also just recently finished a video on how the Biden regime is going to remove and install a new tax scheme for family farms being passed down to the next generation.
Wow.
Yeah, so here's how it works. The new law is going to be you're allowed to give $1 million of land to the next generation. Anything over that is going to be taxed at 40%. But they were using Iowa, for example. The average family farm, and we're talking family farm that was purchased early 1900s, late 1800s, 1920, that is still in the family's hands after multiple generations. The average size of those farms is 350 acres. And at $8,000 an acre, you're well over into, looking at $1.5, $1.7 million of taxes to be paid at 40% for the average family farm. So you get that first million. Let's even round it off to do super simple math. 300 acres at $8,000 an acre. That's 2.4 million. So you get the first million free, but then that leaves just a family farm with a $1.4 million capital gain that then they need to pay 40% on. So you're looking at about $500,000 that the family will have to give out just to keep their land that's been in their possession for generations. So then the family might say, all right, we'll play your game. We're going to sell 100 acres at $8,000, and we're going to have $800,000, and we'll even keep $300,000 to, fix fences and build barn and stuff. Oh no. Once you sell property like that, it becomes a capital gain outside the family tax wealth transfer into its own 40% capital gain sale. So they'll have to pay 40% on the land they're going to sell to pay the tax bill at 40% on the land they're getting stolen. So whatever way you move with the land anymore, if you're just an average landholder of a family farm, They're stealing your land. They're going to take at least 100 acres, if not more, every single generation. And if your land is financed, that's a 0% possibility you can do anything. Because if your land is financed, any money of sale of property goes toward the mortgage or the deed first before you have any money in your hand. So you would never be able to pay the IRS because the money, let's say you sold that, 100 acres and it was being financed, the money from that 100 acre sale would go to pay off the note first before you would have any money in your hand. So actually they might have to sell half or 3/4 of their land to be able to keep 1/4 of it after it's passed on to the next generation. And this is where we get into a real sticky mess. They're stealing farmland right now legally, which should scare everybody because that's going to go offline. They're going to purposely put it offline and use food as a weapon.
Yeah, absolutely. And I've been talking about that for years. On top of losing it just by theft like that from the government, your inherited wealth, a lot of people are just spending it, every last little bit of it. And then they end up losing their home, losing their farm. And because, they haven't been producing. But I wanted to ask you about this thing, because there's this idea of, some white hats, possibly, fighting internally and stopping the governments and stopping the corporations from doing all these bad things. But I keep coming after article of firemen, government officials, police, CEOs, people that work in different industry, and they're all having to quit because they don't want to take medicine. So they're just leaving. So all of these organizations, including the governmental ones, like say, for example, at the DMV, if they mandated a certain medication and half of the employees didn't want to do that, they would just get fired or dismissed. So it seems like that's what's going on now. They're replacing everyone in every field with yes people, and the other people are being put on lists. They're being barred from employment. And then on the other aspect, like you said, attacking their inherited resources.
And you wonder how quality of performance at the job the replacements would be. Because I watched that LA fire chief give his impassioned speech today.
Oh, yeah.
And he loved what he did. I mean, he's like, man, I loved waking up to go to work every single day because I loved it. And, people that are in that thing like EMTs and firemen and, they love their jobs. They love going out. Forestry people, they love it. Resource managers, they love going for the super long hikes to go get the census on elk herds or whatever. Running the drones and getting out there and hiking, man. People love the jobs they do. A lot of them are super passionate about water, land, resources, whatever it is. But if half of them quit and then you just get some regular Joe, okay, you need a job, you're assigned to go be a fireman. Well, they're not going to have the passion. They don't care. And then during that interim switch of the debacle of undertrained people trying to fill in senior positions, there's going to be a complete breakdown. There's 0%. I saw this happen in China. Now, let me tell you a story here. I didn't see it firsthand, but I was there, and I was really deeply into studying the Cultural Revolution and how it happened. And I don't know why I was, but I was. Like when I lived there and I worked there, I loved the traveling, and we went to some remote places because, the group of us that traveled, we all spoke Chinese. We could go super far out in the countryside, and a lot of stuff hadn't changed that much from the Cultural Revolution way back in like 2002, 3, 4. So I was wondering why things were the way they were. Like I wondered why people yelled at each other when they were standing next to each other. But the rule was any more than 4 people together, you were considered subversives and they were arrested and taken away in the middle of the night unless everybody could hear your conversation. So you got 4 people standing around screaming at each other that are less than an arm length away, but you need to hear them a block away. Okay, so these are little idiosyncrasies that I was kind of picking up on when I lived there. But it all stemmed from the Cultural Revolution, which I was super fascinated by Mao Zedong's full grip on farming, the way they killed all the sparrows one year, and they had really good grain production because all the birds were gone. But then the next year, actually subsequent years, there were no birds to fight any of the pests, and almost all their crops are eaten by pests, caterpillars, whatever. There was no natural predation from birds because all the birds were wiped out. And looking at the way that they had to just put people in positions that didn't know anything about the industry, had no passion for it whatsoever, and they were just placed there. Okay, number 71623, you're going over to this new province and this thing, and here's your new job. Go train and have fun. And they're like, well, I don't like working in a hospital. I don't care. The sight of blood makes you faint. I don't care. You're going to be a doctor. Go over there. And it was like this for an entire generation. So the actual motivation levels crept down to near zero, where offices didn't even produce anything. People they went to work, but they had to go to work. So they just sat there and did nothing because they didn't know what to do. Even when they were trained, they still did it at a super substandard level. And they really hated what they did, and there was no passion, and the entire system fell apart. And once the Gang of Four was arrested, and then they were able to rebuild the society, finally giving people a chance to choose what they wanted to do again. I think we're heading that direction where as soon as, like, say 50% of these people retire or leave because they need to get medicine, that the other 50% that are going to replace them are going to be appointed replacees from just a number database that says number 447917222. You are going to be a water resource manager or something like this. And they're like, what do you mean? What's a pipe? These are the kind of people that are just going to be slouted and slammed into positions. Now, the IRS people are going to make me sick to my stomach because it's going to be a bunch of power hungry trippers that are all politically affiliated and told to go after and just, use your piranha teeth and do anything, break the law, make up stuff, and then just go get anything from anybody and everybody, just like they did in every communist revolution.
Yeah, and it's kind of hard to deny that we're living in a communist revolution, but it seems like the revolution's over, considering both right and left, kind of agree on most of these totalitarian new measures they take and the direction of the world governance. They show that they're not working for our people, rather they're just only working for what they're told to do. Like, we look at the Surgeon General, and he's already saying that it's a very reasonable thing to do to let businesses, colleges, imagine this, and we talked about this already, about how you wouldn't even be able to go to the hospital if you don't do what they say. If you're not a good boy, you can't go eat. And we're seeing this pop up all over the world, even though it seemed like it would be a crazy thing. It's happening. I keep reading article after article about, a local government tries to fight tyranny, and then they just go around with some kind of legal jargon and continue to do mandate. I'm going to say the world governance mandate is how everything's going. Businesses, the biggest ones are all going, like Apple, Facebook, all of these are trying to help with this passport system. And we all know that really has nothing to do with our health. It's only about tracking every last individual on the planet. And we're almost there. They're fighting. The other day I saw these glasses and I was really impressed with them. And it was some startup company, and you put the glasses on, it was kind of like They Live, except for seeing the secret messages. It just blocks out all screens. So it turns off all the propaganda. So if you were going around with headphones and these glasses on, you wouldn't even know all of these things were happening. And it might give you a chance to just look around and look and see how strange human beings behave nowadays. If the only normal people that I see are out in the streets protesting around the world. And I'm kind of, happy that they're doing that. And I wonder why it's not happening here, really. I guess it's because in our country, we kind of folded to the idea that if you exercise your rights, then you're some kind of bad guy.
Yeah, Ransom, you were fading in and out there super crazy that last little bit, but I picked up what you were saying about, I'm wondering when a tidal wave of no comes and literally everybody comes out of their house on the same day and rearrests everybody who's trying to keep them in their houses. And literally the entire population comes out in the same day and walks up to everybody that's trying to keep control and says, you no longer got the power. Drop your cuffs. Drop your legislative pens. You're over with. We all say you're done today. And when that happens for the first country, the world shall indeed change, and it will roll like a tidal wave, just like it was in 2019. Now, I'll take you back there, those with goldfish memories. Remember, there were 22 nations across the world protesting central banks. And magically, within a month, the virus started. Now, I find it a coincidental timing, too, when it was becoming a snowball runaway effect of the next set of countries, all coming out for the exact same cause. And see, this is where it gets into, does your mind, can you bend reality? Because 22 countries, hundreds of millions of people, every single day and week and weekend on the streets demanding central banks step aside from their countries and put the monetary policy back in, sound money into the country. And then it was the 23rd country, and then it was going to be the 24th, and then the 50th, and then the 100th country. And then central bankers couldn't allow that because that thought process of billions of people thinking the same thing on the same day could bend reality enough to shift physical form. So right when I went around the 22nd country, suddenly that scary bug came and nobody could assemble anymore. And you notice there's been no street protests for central banks removal, and nothing has happened since that point. Now everybody's cowered in their homes, and central banks and militaries are on the run again, unchecked, doing whatever they want. The genie was almost put back in the bottle there for a moment in 2019. I had a very hopeful, burgeoning heart full of energy, thinking that finally this is it. The people are going to take back the planet. But the fear came in and everybody gave away their rights and gave up all the gains so quickly.
Yeah, it was a real surprise to me that everyone did that. Gave up on their ability to just go in the public and breathe. I have something crashing here. Let me rejoin you.
Okay, I will let you go here for a second and come on back. All right, so that was Ransom Godwin for 420 TV Freedomist Films. He's still broadcasting live on YouTube. He was trying to relink our Skype call in through YouTube live stream program and then come back out through a second mic. But we had that problem once before where there was a little bit of echo in the broadcast. So he is going to cut off, still broadcasting live if you want to check out the images and different video feeds that he's putting up there live streaming at the moment. And I'll join him back in here and he'll be straight up mic, so it should be a much better reception. Now, right when he was signing off, he sent me this news here. Eat the squares. Bizarre little food cubes pushed as the cuisine of the future. Now, where have we seen this before? Eating little cubes as your, let's say, what could we say? Eating your little cubes as your dinner. And when they look at it, it looks like little protein cubes that you would have, and that's it. Pretty interesting stuff. So these edible nuggets are something out of the World Economic Forum Great Reset dystopia, quote unquote. So I don't know. These little cubes definitely do not look appealing for me. But if that's the way it's going to be for you to eat and have your protein, that sets us up into, if anybody has seen this movie called Snowpiercer, because that's what they did. They gave these people cubes of food, cubes of gel to eat. But what we're looking at here, Ransom, is something with that food cube thing, very similar. It's almost like Soylent Green in pretty little cubes. The nice presentation, it's on a nice black slate, Japanese style, you know, something that you go in a Japanese restaurant, have sashimi on, looks real cool. But the food cubes as the future of food doesn't really appeal to me, knowing that it's going to be factory processed, synthesized proteins, and who knows what will be in that. Not really sure. Ransom, are you there? Got to try to get him back in here. But the food is going to be the most important thing. And if we cannot all together come to some sort of supply chain that continually brings us food without the intervention of government stepping in the middle to cause artificial shortages, record prices for stocks based on increasing, taking out of your pocket and putting into the corporate coffers, then there's going to be a serious problem. Because looking at Tyson Foods, you know, the last articles they were saying, oh, they were trying to stay ahead of inflation, so they had to raise their prices because prices on the wholesale level were rising so fast that Tyson was having a difficult time keeping up with inflation. And it sounds like a reasonable argument. And I said, okay, well, let me dig into this a little more. And as I looked in and saw the Q2 and so far Q3 earnings, they made nearly 1/3 of their entire revenue during this price rises that they passed on to the general public. And I thought, well, they're trying to stay ahead of inflation here. They're trying to run ahead of inflation. Well, how much are they really running ahead? I was thinking, you know, it might be, you know, 5, 6%, 10% that they were staying ahead of inflation, because the whole news article was Tyson, oh, things are getting too expensive at the wholesale level. They need to raise prices to stay ahead of inflation. So I was thinking it was tens of percent that they were staying ahead of inflation and rising their prices. 100% is where they were. They were doubling the inflation to stay ahead of it. 100%. I was shocked. The way they put it, it was like, oh, Tyson was pinched into a corner and all their suppliers cut them off and they couldn't get anything because it was getting too expensive too fast. Now, if you would have read the headlines in the first couple paragraphs, that's the way it would appear that Tyson Food was locked in there like that. With all the supply chain shortage, just makes sense. They couldn't get everything's getting rough for them too. But at 100% running above the inflation, that's 12% now, and passing those 90% over gains on to you and me, no wonder they're having record profits. And this is the way the game's going to be played. They're going to keep saying shortages. They're going to keep raising prices, but they're going to keep pushing in and booking in record profits and record revenue for the year. Shipping companies are doing the very same thing. We're hearing about runaway rates. Oh, the ports are blocked. Nothing's moving around the planet. Oh, this and that. And then you look at a bevy of these shipping companies off the indices, and they're all pushing record profits as well this year. Now, wait a second. There's a huge disconnect here between, oh, there's some stoppages and shortages, delays here and delays there. Oh, we have to pass this on to the consumer, but then they're not really passing it on to you anywhere remotely. Break even at 10 or 20% over. They're so far into the record territory. This is just strictly a wealth transfer based on lies. And complete control of the food and the shipping. And now companies and corporations are setting whatever prices they want, and the news backing them up, throwing these stories out here saying, all these companies are having problems there, all the shipping companies are delayed here. All the while, they're going to continue with record pricing and record price increases, all going right back into their bottom line of record, beating the estimates. I couldn't believe Tyson beat the estimates by over $1 on what people thought the revenue would be. Over $1. That's insane. People come in cents over, and it's like a world news. Oh, there's 7 cents over, beat expectations. Wow, look at ding, 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 ding. You know, number one news story in the financial markets. Oh, there were 7 cents over the expectation. $1 over. That's ridiculous. You know, beating estimates at that's just criminal is what it is. There should be an investigation into price gouging at that point. Not about staying ahead of inflation. It's about wealth transfer. And if you're looking on, you haven't gotten the whole message yet of the wealth transfer is ongoing with the great reset of every dollar anybody's ever saved is now going back to corporate hands, fascist companies like Apple. You were talking about, Ransom, before you dropped off the line there. Where this is, the serfs are being harvested, their wealth is being harvested. That's for sure. And I'm one of them.
Well, it's obviously a way that they're trying to attack, anybody's ability to go around the design program that they're giving us. The borders that they're setting up are new kinds of borders. And I was watching this little documentary about how Guatemala is changing over to a cryptocurrency nation, and they're all worried about the cryptocurrency. They're set to use Bitcoin as a accepted currency there. And I find it funny that there are so many people leaving there while major corporation and tech is investing so much in these areas that everybody's leaving. Meanwhile, the people up here, I'm going to say in the northern hemisphere and in the southern hemisphere and kind of the more industrialized nations, seem to be the nations they're targeting with these complete shutdowns of society, where they make anecdotal rules about opinions that are easily disproven, and you're expected to just accept it. I've been watching these streamers from Australia where they can't go anywhere, and the police are just shutting it down immediately. If you just try to drive somewhere, you need permission to go anywhere, and you can't compare it to any real thing that anybody knows about except for the 30s in Germany. I mean, I know that that's kind of a weird thing to keep bringing up, but it's the only thing in recent times that we can compare it to. And you notice that they pulled all of these events right about the time that the people from that era are mostly gone and dead. And then let's not talk about what happened to the remaining people that were in homes and whatnot. Now, I'm convinced that we are going through, what a lot of people talk about, what Bill Gates has talked about. I mean, whenever they set up a monument kind of right in your face to tell you what their plans are, and then you see, all of these companies coming out with advanced robotics, all of a sudden you see NASA admitting to having free energy. I was looking at an article the other day about their new engines that they have. So they're releasing all this information at the same time as they're culling the public, so that there's no one to fight back. And when they redistributed the wealth, and I'm going to say they started mostly in the late 90s, and just nobody saw it coming because the conquerors wore suits this time instead of dictator uniforms and things like that.
Well, you're meant to forget. The way that things are staged, and you could talk about the fourth turning, but there's basis in fact for the numerals and the number of generations and the number of years before things are from the beginning to the collapse. And like you say, almost everybody of that age has forgotten of the real causes of the conflicts. And that's what the rinse and repeat is all about. The 80-year cycle. Because you have to think about it. Anybody who was alive that was a teenager that would have remembered and recollected why these problems started, read the newspapers, even if they were in university in the 1940s, they're all have died of old age by now. There's very few people left that were even alive during World War II, even as toddlers, because they would be going on what, 80 plus years old now? But if they were toddlers, they wouldn't have really remembered anything. If they were even just 10 or 11 years old, they'd be putting in the early 90s. So anybody who had lived through it, saw the real causation of it, understood it, they're too old now and there's too few of them to really inform the public. So, of course, this reset is right on the same timelines as the fourth turning. But we saw that also, you go back 80 years, and it seems to be a cycle. So go back 80 years to the 1940s, and then you go back again, and then it brings us to 1860. And then go further back again, and then we get back into 1770s. It seems to be a cycle. And then you go back in again 80 years prior to that, then we're right back into the grand solar minimum of the Maunder minimum. And we saw the chaos that had ensued across all civilization and just wrecked absolutely almost down to zero. I think 25% of the world's population starved at that point. And it's just a rinse and repeat. Like the globalists are counting on nobody remembering what the catalyst was. Because you got to think about it, even if you were living in Germany, 1930s, Europe, you would have seen things come and go. Everything would have been destroyed. By the time you got everything rebuilt and reset, it's already the late 1950s, early 1960s. People are just super happy to be living in some comfort again, and they forgot the real lessons of what caused it, how the conflict, how the society was changed, how the minds were washed, and we're right back at it again. Like it's the next time here. The fourth turning's begun, along with so many other cycles overlapping, and I will keep coming back to the planets, the way they're going to sit in our solar system in 2024 of October is the same configuration that was in 79 AD, and it has not been seen with that precise square, if you will, from the gas giants, Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, and Neptune. They haven't been in that square configuration at that perfection of square where the Earth is sandwiched between two magnetic fields since 79 AD. So you have to think about, not only is it a 400-year cycle, but it's 5 of these 400-year cycles. And on top of that, then the 80-year cycle intertwined with that, because 5 of those fourth turnings, those 80-year cycles, equals 1 grand solar minimum. So then you have to think, if we're at a 2,000-year cycle, how many of those are we really at? Because the interglacial's coming to an end. Things are going to start to get cooler anyway, naturally, although the media would have you believe otherwise. Record Antarctic ice gain. Lost crops from freeze damage that they haven't seen in 150 years across the entire southern hemisphere, yet we're still supposed to believe that we're getting into runaway warming. Yet almost all the crop damage this year is from out-of-season blizzards or extreme record cold in the 150-year range. Brazil lost most of its second corn crop. CONAB's trying to do like the USDA does and trying to, well, it's not really that bad, but the farmers on the ground are giving the actual yields, and they're saying, well, pretty much the entire second corn crop is gone out of Brazil. It was frozen while it still stood, green stalk, no less. So everything's collapsing now. Coffee industry lost 75%. There's a lot of dead plants they're going to have to replant. It'll take a few years to come back. And a lot of things are not making sense, but with the whole cyclical nature of the way the world's turning at the moment, these lockdowns are going to get more intense as the food offsets and becomes more expensive and less available. And Ransom, I'm going to say, did you see what's happening in Ho Chi Minh City? For like the next 3 weeks, they're not going to let anybody out of their apartment at all, zero, even more strict than what you're seeing in Australia.
Wow.
So if you can't get the food, they're going to have to deliver it to your house. And what happened the last time, there was a lot of political retribution for people causing trouble in the neighborhood, where they just didn't deliver food to their house. Now, the story ends there. We don't know what happened to them. But this time the lockdown's going to go for 3 weeks, not 2, and they're still going to be relying on the same food deliverers. So political retribution and letting people starve in their homes and not delivering food or water, full total lockdown. And then what happens at that point?
It seems like we're just one step away from that. Hopefully you can hear me better now, because
much better. Yeah, it's a night and day difference, hugely different.
Okay, because I had a whole line of weird events happen, and we were broadcasting live on YouTube. I tested the sound with several people on Skype calls before, and then as soon as I get on with you, we start having audio problems. YouTube just shut off the stream, so I don't know what that was about. They just shut it off. I tried to reinitiate it, and it won't let me. And then, and then all of a sudden my internet just starts going nuts. So I switched over to a mobile on the phone here. And I just thought, you were sitting there talking about the 30s and all of the things that were happening then about, having to prove who you were, where you were going, what your affiliations were. And just like you're talking about getting retribution and people not getting food delivered, you can see in the US that they're pushing that you get all your food delivered. If it's box chains or these new meal kits, it's all going that way. And I sent you an article about these little food cubes, and it just makes so much sense where we're really going, because these are not food at all. So they're little cubes that are supposedly, like futuristic sci-fi movie stuff, where you just take a pill. Basically, it's a little square. You can heat it up in the microwave. It has all the proteins and nutrients supposedly that you need. And it's not a sci-fi thing. And listen to the terminology that they're using at the World Economic Forum, that this will be one of the best things for the Great Reset by promoting food alternatives, similar to something out of a sci-fi movie, but it's not similar to something. It is something out of a sci-fi movie. It's just like these little cubes. And I've been seeing all of these companies one by one start blacklisting people for either their political affiliations when it comes to talking about certain topics, or over the medicine issue and the, my body, my choice issue. And it's really easy to see that it's only one more step till these megacorps, because you got to remember that the same companies run all of these little smaller companies, and people don't realize that. So like Pizza Hut, Kentucky Fried Chicken, Taco Bell, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera, all owned by the same major company. And so if they make a big decision, like we're not going to serve certain group of people, or we're not going to deliver to a certain group of people because you're not on the list, you're not part of the app, because they have these apps running at full speed through Apple, and some of the social media companies are helping with that. These are the same group of people that are spying on you on a regular. These are the same group of people that are collecting your metadata to figure out where you go, what you do, who you talk to. And then you add the idea of having a little Android in your pocket that's now connected to not only your social credit score, because we are using that here now, if people don't want to admit it or not. I mean, it's happening from censorship to, I was showing an article before I got cut off of a man who's been kicked off of a heart transplant list because he's from a certain group or demographic of people. So we are there in the United States, Australia. But yeah, the next thing is literally some guy walking up and down the block telling you to get back in your house until they make a final decision of what to do with the excess of people as they see it.
Well, that's already happening. And that Melbourne lockdown, you are only allowed to order food online. There's no more takeaway restaurants. Before you could, what they call that, the keyword, contactless something, where you could actually call a restaurant and say, hey, I'm coming down, takeout only. Okay. They've closed every restaurant in Melbourne. There's no more takeout. And the spokesman, whoever it was, bobblehead number one in Australian accent, said that you can only order from online retailers now, Amazon, Walmart, or whatever. But then what if they don't want to deliver the food to your house? Again, political retribution. Or what if they just don't have it? And you can order online once a week because they can't have that many people running around giving food deliveries daily. So old people are allowed to go out to the stores, which are going to be government-owned and operated supermarkets that'll be open only for the old people that can go once a week for 1 hour only to go get food. It seems like the military is going to be taking over the supermarkets, and they're going to open a select few in the city for the old folk to go shop 1 hour a week. Now, the rest of people like you and me, Ransom, our age, we can only order online. And that is like Amazon food deliveries, etc. I'll use Amazon as a point here. But since you can only order food once a week, what happens if you order 100 items and they can only give you 20 items because they're backstocked or out of those other ones, but your order comes in, you only have 20 items. Like, well, you can't reorder. You can only order once a week. Or what if they decide, no, not to bring you, your credit card got declined. Sorry, there's no, you ordered this week already, but your credit card was declined. That was your order, and you get no order. You get no second order this week. Or what happens if you don't have a job and you can't pay for your internet, so you can't even access the internet to order your food? You're not allowed to go to your neighbors, and they're going to track the IP addresses. But what if you can't pay for your mobile phone bill and no way for you to access the internet to order food online because you lost your internet at your home because you lost your job, and you lost your phone at the same time because you lost your job and you can't pay your bill? Then what? This is where Australia sits today in Melbourne until after the 1st of January. They're not going to let up that lockdown, this thing, ordering online only. So when will people run out of money and they can't pay their communications bills, where then they can't physically order the food, is my question. That is already happening, and that's one of the things. And they're like, well, it's not our problem. Literally, starve in your home. We'll get a cleanup crew to come and get you after the end of the year here, is where they're going with this. Once the weather warms up, they're going to start to smell the bodies, and they're going to go with the cleanup crews. But until that time, you're locked in the house indefinitely. You can only order online. That's it. Period. The whole city, the whole suburb, everything that is considered Melbourne and the suburbs of Melbourne are at this lockdown point right now. See, I can't believe the people all just didn't come out of their houses and say, no, enough. enough is enough. We're starving. No, you're done. But we've seen this through history so many times that they, take like 5 guys with rifles and they can corral like 3,000 people. It's just unbelievable how it's such a copy paste of history we're witnessing again.
I don't want to get too sci-fi, but I keep having this weird thought that, with all the evidence that you see out there, it's easy for someone to think that they're targeting that group of people I was talking about that won't cooperate. But I see articles also like, these companies that take blood to make medications and also to give it to, medical patients for transfusions and marrow and all of these other things that you would take from one donor to another. None of these companies, and I even looked into it. I wanted to find out the companies that make older people feel young by allowing them to pump in a young person's blood. I think the company's called Ambrosia, ironically. But none of these companies, from the medical industry to the private industry, are allowing people that conform to the mandates to donate anything. So, this gives me this creepy feeling that when they talk about reducing the population, I think it may be the capitulators that they're actually targeting, because those are the people that volunteer to take every brand new thing that comes out. They're the people that, are the first to follow the trends with the apps, social medias, rules, regulations, mandates. They're the first people to point out their neighbors. Those are the people that seem to be in my opinion, group that are necessarily going to be sick, not only from their food choices, but from their lifestyles. And then I look at these companies that are billion-dollar companies, and I know there's really, really smart people. So in contrast to all of the other companies, like the ones that are putting out campaigns of propaganda for you to choose a certain path of your life, these companies are not wanting any of those people that conform to donate to their companies. And it's such a sensitive science, what they're doing, allowing people to take blood for different purposes or organs, that it seems to be maybe there's an underlying, plot there. When you see that these companies don't want any of this new technology inside of there. And it kind of brings to mind, the new Mad Max movie, the remake of it, where in that movie they were hunting down people based on their blood types. With very low tech, they were still doing high tech things like blood transfusions and stuff to keep a certain group of elite alive. So, I know that's far out there, but it is kind of something that I take in consideration with deductive logic, that if the elite people aren't doing the same things that they're telling everyone else to do, then there's probably something there.
You can still donate your blood in California, even if you've already had some medicine.
Well, let me tell you something about that. California is the first state that allowed people with dangerous diseases to also donate blood. So, and think about the people that like to take, like I said, the mandates and stuff are also in the same demographic of people that do, certain things in their life where they might need medications based on diseases they get. And it's bizarre that they did that in that one place. Like it makes you think about tests that companies do in one area or another and then contrast the results.
We'll be right back. 2 minutes and 2 seconds for a break. Stretch the legs, grab a refill. Ransom Godwin, 420 TV, Freedomist Films, right? Broadcasting. Well, the broadcast was cut off. Live on YouTube. And myself, David Dubine, right here. Adapt 2030. That was a non-COVID cough. Be right back.
Listening to Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com, and we'll be right back after this message.
Be evasive, but that doesn't mean that they're telling the truth as opposed to fiction.
In Genesis chapter 6, verse 4, and there were giants in those days, and also after that, when the sons of God came and unto the daughters of men, indicating that there were giants before the Nephilim.
And sons of God, plural. They weren't talking about Jesus coming down.
No, that's right. Yeah.
I'm Steve Crawford, host of Factor Theory Live. Join me every Sunday night from 10 p.m. till midnight Eastern Standard Time on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com. Check it out.
Transcending time and space, let us take you to the place inside your mind where thoughts divide and mysteries unwind. Join us every Monday evening right here on Revolution Radio at freedomslips.com from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time. And you will catch the Fenton Perspective with our great host, Lorian Fenton. Come listen in as she shares her amazing stories from the past to present, along with all of her guest secrets to the future. That's the Fenton Perspective every Monday evening right here from 8 to 10 p.m. Eastern Time, only on Revolution Radio. Oh, and you don't need to expect us. We're already here.
Galactic Interstellar Council on Revolution Radio Studio A, Fridays at 2 p.m. Eastern. Join us as we traverse the starseed paradigm, as expressed in the time-space continuum that we know as the divine expression of love and light. Integrating this conscious unity into the galactic paradigm. So welcome all, both terrestrial beings and galactic beings as one. So be it. You're listening to Revolution Radio.
If you think for 1 second that the Capitol will ever treat us fairly, you are lying to yourselves. Because we know who they are and what they do. This is what they do, and we must fight back. You can torture us and bomb us. Fire is catching. And if we burn, you burn with us.
Good evening.
Are you awake yet? I hope.
We've tried for years and years to use passive resistance and loud voices to make a change. The time is over. Your governments around the world have no other goal than to decimate your entire existence at the hands of the bankers and the elites. The war is coming, and it's your choice to decide if you want to be a warrior or a victim. Denial is not a choice anymore. Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com, the #1 listener-supported radio station on the planet, not giving up. Revolution Radio. All right, thanks for listening while we took that short break here at Revolution Radio, freedomslips.com. And now we're going to get back to your host.
And welcome back for the second hour of mini Ice Age conversations. FreedomSlips.com, Revolution Radio Studio A, every Thursday night, 10 p.m. to midnight. If you value free speech and getting some media outside the past narratives from one company to the next through the mainstream media, consider a donation to keep this venue online. Donation tab right at the top, freedomslips.com. Revolution Radio Studio A and B. Now, as I get Ransom back on the call here, I wanted to talk a little bit about where's the next maneuver in the chessboard going to take us across world affairs and world events. Control mechanism tightening. Well, we already see the lockdowns, and eventually almost everybody's going to be forced to order from online venues, and you'll be locked into your home, and nobody will, I don't know, be able to go outside their home ever again. You can order online, though. Send more money to the corporate hands, the fascists. But as you can see where it's going to move with the introduction of cryptocurrency, we're going to go right over to VeChain here. They're launching a blockchain platform to track and catalog all carbon data. So this is where the next maneuver is going to come in for control on your life. Supply chain management, that's where VeChain fits in anyway. But this new protocol called the Digital Carbon Footprint, SaaS service, is going to allow, it sounds so innocuous, so nice, so easy to help the environment. It's going to allow enterprise users, business users, to log key data and integrate it with world's leading third-party assurance providers, fact checkers, that they can book in their carbon emissions data with the traditional supply chain. That way they can provide a transparent accountability for all layers of CO2 emissions in the supply chain. Now, you know that carbon global scheme is coming. It is going to be yet another control mechanism. How much carbon you emit, and they're going to limit the amount of emissions, which means, you see it here, they're going to limit the amount of supply chain movement. And since it's going to be all tied to VeChain with the digital carbon footprint, they're already putting into play these carbon reduction initiatives across the entire value chain, across the entire world. You got to save the world. It's freezing. You're losing crops everywhere from cold weather damage, yet somehow we need to cool the planet even further to cause more crop losses is kind of the message I'm getting. And the control on how much CO2 is emitted down literally to the gram, not ton, gram of CO2 in the supply chain movement. Now, once you exceed a certain amount, even a gram over the allotted amount for that movement of company, product, vehicle, methodology, whatever it is, it's going to be stopped. It's on the blockchain, so they can't remove it and change, inflate, deflate, play magic with the numbers, because it's going to go in as a booked piece of data. Now, President Xi Jinping over in China is also on board with this to move to a low carbon trajectory. And they're also saying, yeah, that's great. We should go to a blockchain based protocol on VeChain to report all carbon emissions from all vehicles, all business, all supply chain, all consumption by every individual, every corporation, even animals. So the way it's reading, it even goes into cattle herding, different kind of animal husbandry industries, and down to the farm tractors and ethanol. And if you can read, it's quite the in-depth report here from VeChain about the digital carbon footprint service. This is going to be another way that once the protocols are set, once the numbers are mandated of how many tons are allowed in the air, well, what if we get to that number and it's only 3 months into the year? Well, everything will cease and stop until next year when it's reset, and then you can start from zero to back up to a number again, whatever it is. 1,000,000 tons. But requiring every individual in the future, starting now with corporations. Again, they could stop a corporation and say, whoa, 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 corporation ABC, you've just surpassed your carbon allotted credits as you've logged into the blockchain-based digital system. What happens if in some computer AI algorithm, they just lock whatever it is on the tracks? Let's say they're delivering by rail, by ship, by car, AI, autonomous driven cars. Okay, you've gone over your CO2 emissions outlet and the vehicle just comes to a stop on the street, on the highway, whatever. All good would be lost in there. There'd be an insurance claim, maybe, maybe not. But the amount of goods reaching you and me is going to be substantially reduced. Now, you see how this dovetails into a depopulation event, which is ongoing, more corporate control, and places like Australia and Vietnam as well. You know, they're making every citizen go straight to online ordering, cutting out all small business. There's no more small business in Australia or Vietnam. And, you know, Southeast Asian nations, that's the way the whole entire thing works there. Everybody goes out. I mean, there's 90% small business, 10% large business, but they're inverting that into there's no more small business. Everybody has to order online from the corporates. I don't know how long it's going to work before the Vietnamese start to turn on their own leaders there. It won't take too long, I assure you, when people start starving. And the first bit of whatever happens on the streets, people see that and they're like, wait a second, we got nothing left to lose now. Let's go for it. I mean, they fought off the Americans for how many years? Superior army, and the Vietnamese kicked them to the curb after the guerrilla excursions for how many years? 10? What were there from 65 to 74, like almost 10 years. He's 63 if you talk about the advisors going in early. After the French got kicked out. Same thing in Afghanistan. You know, I'm reading this Mike Adams report here. And his situation awareness, you know, he's got a lot of deep level ties into a lot, let's say, deeper circles of information than I do. And I have a lot of people I contact with, and I feel I have a decent array of good information coming in every day to me. But, you know, Mike Adams is, you know, miles above on that. He was one of the originals, especially with his alternative health site, and then him starting Brighteon, the server that doesn't censor information. So he gets a lot more deep info. And his update for today talks about Afghanistan collapse signaling world nations as a starting gun flare to abandon the petrodollar. Now, when this happens, the United States is going to go into a hyperinflationary event. Once that happens, the dominoes are going to fall across every other Western nation, and all military is going to have to pull out from the entire planet back to the United States. The money is not going to be able to pay for the foreign wars or the mercenaries or the foreign armies to occupy different lands. And we've seen this through history, you know, when countries need to pull back off their empire. British would be the latest, you know, look back in a good kind of global fashion there. But when it comes back and we're only manufacturing nothing in the United States, trying to import things with, when I say hyperinflated dollars, I'm not even kidding, or you might be, you know, it'd be $100,000 to buy a loaf of bread kind of hyperinflation, $10,000 to buy a loaf of bread. At what point do we even get goods from overseas? We won't. And see, that's the thing. If this petrodollar is ditched, you could follow what happened with the Weimar Republic, and I'll give you a little breakdown here. In the beginning, when the hyperinflation was coming and loss of faith in Germany's currency was occurring, it went from 1x to a 3x. And then it went up to a 14x. But then people were so angry and on the streets every day that the government did whatever they did with their gold reserves, and it brought it back down to about a 5x increase in prices previously. And everybody's like, look, yay, we solved the problem. We went from a 14x increase in purchase price down to 5x only. Whoa, we're saved. But that only lasted about 3 months. And then it went from 5x to about 3,000x in 3 months. And then from there, we know the story. It went from 3,000 to 10,000 to 100,000 to 10 million. But at that point, too, you know, you read the stories about money around other nations, what they could buy with sound money inside a collapsed, hyperinflated economy. Now, go back to World War I with Austria, and we saw the same exact thing. See, the destruction wasn't as complete in Austria post-World War I, so people were still able to actually get in there. It wasn't firebombed from endless bombing runs from the Allies. It was trench warfare, kind of, you know, throwing some, you know, mustard gas over here, and everything was kind of confined into these fronts with all these, you know, trenches dug everywhere. It didn't really get into the cities like it was heavily destroyed in World War II. So after World War I, people were able to go in with, was it 6 gold coins, $20 gold pieces, and they bought an entire apartment block complex, 6 floors, almost an entire city block of what we understand for just 5 or 6 gold coins. And the point was, to buy a pair of shoelaces in Austria at that time cost as much as it did prior to the hyperinflation. To buy 200 pairs of handmade leather shoes was just the price of a pair of shoelaces. And these stories went on and on and on, where if your window was broken, the window would cost you 4 or 5 times the purchase price of the house that you were repairing the window in. And these stories just kept going and going and going. So people would come in with their gold coins and silver coinage from just across the borders. The hotels were full. People were buying houses just so they could stay there, so they could go buy more land, more property, more art, more everything. Anything and everything was on fire sale in the country because it hyperinflated. But everybody, all their periphery neighbors, still had really sound money, and they could come in and buy anything. And this whole hyperinflation tourism that spurred during the time was quite interesting if you read about the stories of just, it was off the hook, way bigger parties than the 1920s because people bring their own alcohol and just come rocking in with their own train loads of people and have these massive parties and buy the hotels, all for just less than it would for them to stay a night in their own country. They were buying the hotel. This was how much the hyperinflation had hit Austria post-World War I. Now, if you don't think the same thing is going, not could, but is going to happen to the United States here, you know, we got a little bit, this report came across my feed here just as we were getting on the show tonight. So I didn't really get to delve into what Mike was talking about with the Afghan signaling the collapse of the petrodollar. But Ransom's back with us. Ransom, I am so glad you're here. I was rambling on about, you know, this new digital carbon footprint service that's going to track all carbon emissions using VChain starting in 2021. And here's another scary thing. Microsoft wins the U.S. patent for Ledger Independent Token Services, which is another strange one because Microsoft now has its fingers in the Hyperledger fabric of the blockchain, and they got cryptocurrency patents out there too. So it's all these same players keep recycling themselves into, well, the new money.
Yeah, which is obviously cryptocurrency. I've been watching mine kind of, you know, trickle up from where it was when I bought it. Steady, it goes down a little bit, it goes up, but you know, the end of the petrodollar seems like one of the major components of what they've been planning on, and that's why they're getting everyone used to these new types of payment methods through their apps, through their phones, with these points. And I hate to go full circle, but they're mixing it with your life choices on what you're going to be able to do. And I was just looking at an article from Costco talking about the 25 things that they're no longer going to be selling, and then you can just keep going, and all of these companies are talking about things that they'll no longer be letting you have access to. And, you can blame it on different reasons that they're just trying to save money or that. But I think a major component is because when certain ingredients stop coming, a whole plethora of products just stop showing up on the shelves. And I think we're about to, have a couple of natural disasters here in the United States that are going to give a good preview of things to come. We got a major hurricane coming up the Gulf there. And with everything being turned off, that even if you did have these cryptocurrency things that were ready to go on your apps and things on your phone. And speaking of the phone, ironically, tonight, my phone just decided it needed to update, reset, and reboot and everything. And just right in the middle of our call. It's really bizarre. I feel like I'm getting hacked. And, I've been relying on all of this technology all month. I've been doing all kinds of stuff. And then all of a sudden, I can't use anything. It's all failing. And it kind of makes me think, like if some kind of natural disaster, and I'm not even talking about, the big scheme of cycles, but just these smaller ones like hurricanes, earthquakes, etc., wildfires. You don't even have places to go. And then when you get there, they're deciding who gets to shop and who doesn't get to shop at even those places. So I'm thinking that if you have money in the bank, it might be a good idea to turn those into solid assets, things that you can use, things that you own, because you can see that the dollar is probably, you can add in inflation and deflation, but just the corporate greed of some of these companies. I was reading an article about Tim Cook and how, he got 4 payments of $750 million to sell out the company and change it over to more of a spying control network, because they're one of the major proponents for the passports, but also using cryptocurrencies. And then you were just talking about Microsoft. That gives Bill Gates and others like him access to every single avenue of e-commerce possible. So everything that you think you're ordering because you can't have it. And, that circles me back to these things that, like the Japanese guy was talking about the medication. And, I know that you brought that up so many times, and now it's becoming a topic, not to act like we're looking in the crystal ball. It's really a lot of common sense that things that society needs are just slowly evaporating around. And while people are paying attention to some of these political games of the right versus the left and who their favorite guy is getting in office, meanwhile, they're doing things that are completely outside of our system of law, selling us out completely. So you can see that hungry bellies are going to be a major issue in societal change. And I'm talking about the United States, not just these other places. You can see that they don't take the public seriously when they do protest about certain things. It's kind of been a joke. And I've been watching the ones overseas. The French are kind of doing it a little passively after, the last several years of all kinds of protests for other or different reasons. Now they're just sitting out peacefully picnicking in the middle of streets, eating their food. And it's that power to say no. And I think that's what we all have to do. We all have to choose to stop using their system that they're using to destroy us with.
Yeah, I would agree. And I'm finally seeing some rays of hope where people are saying, well, we really got nothing left to lose, and these things are going to overtake us anyway. Let's start living without it now so we can get used to living without it. So when it does come to that time, we've already, made that transition. So I want to go back to the Microsoft thing here too, because for me, knowing about crypto, this is one of the most dangerous things here that Microsoft is getting its fingers into. It's a patent for techniques to implement cross-chain token management. So anytime you're going to cross-swap something, it's going to be in Microsoft's hands. And if you think this is going to be an anonymous swap like they do in so many other protocols at the moment, it is putting itself right in the middle of every cross-chain token swap that's going to be registered through the government. And there's going to be taxes on this. So what's your exit strategy to come out without getting taxed if you can? Which jurisdiction will allow you to sell and come out tax-free? Because here in the States, if you exit let's say you gained 50% and you spent $100 and it went up to $150, well, you're going to have to pay 40% of that $50 gain. So wherever you're coming out in the crypto game here, any gains you make are going to have to come out, and you're going to have to pay the tax man. So this is where Microsoft is going to sit in the middle of that. Any cross-chain token management. So cross-chain just means one coin you can exchange it for another coin, and some of them are interoperable, like Ethereum. A lot of protocols are built on top of Ethereum, but sometimes they can swap over to another protocol like VeChain, for example, or Solana, which is a big one coming out, proof of time concepts. So there's a lot of what they call cross swaps or cross chains. The utilization of this is building. That's why these decentralized lending protocols are just becoming the biggest thing since sliced bread, is because they're utilizing the same cross chain applications to allow you to come in and out of tokens, regardless if the protocol is different, that you're not only locked into one single chain, if you will. So that's why they give 300 or 400 different coins that you can jump in and out of. Now, using the tech for storage of data, etc., that's a single chain. Like R3 and Cortana, and what's that chain core? I guess there's one more. Starts with a Q. Quorum. I mean, these are all single chains. These are all management systems that are for government, by government, to track big business movement. But now Microsoft's going to be in charge of all of this. So, moving into Hyperledger, or Hashgraph is finally going to be the last stop. So, where we sit here with blockchain right now, and everybody's learning about Bitcoin and blockchain and Ethereum and all that. Well, the Hyperledger is the next step moving forward to cataloging all information into the blockchain across the entire planet. Carbon emissions off VeChain, great, whatever. There's so many of these, but the private chains are like R3 and Cardano, etc. But the end goal of all this is to take it all over to Hashgraph. So blockchain is just an intermediary step in about 10 years to move everything to Hashgraph. But see, is Hashgraph going to be decentralized like it is now, or is it going to be all under government control? And see, this is where Microsoft's setting itself up right now to get in the cross-chain game between everything public and private blockchains. But then in the future, it already is talking about moving from Hyperledger over into Hashgraph. So Microsoft's going to be in the way of it, tracking and tracing every single transaction. So the minute you're in the game and the minute you come out, you're going to be taxed. And believe me, they're going to be working with the government to be the tax tracer, because they're probably going to get a percentage of your gains by making sure that when you come out in a sale somewhere, that's registered then with the IRS, and then they're going to get a percentage for tracking all that. Because if you're going to do chain analytics or chain assessments or investigation, you got to find out where that person came in, when they bought that initial cryptocurrency. And then if you move it through 15 or 20 different wallets, and then you finally exit out on somewhere, you're going to do some analytics on that. I mean, that's 20 different transactions following the numbers. But it looks like Microsoft is putting patents out for exactly that. Not just cross-chain management systems, cross-chain analytics. And that's the way they're going to go. I can already see it the way it's written here. They're going to be chasing down every single exit of everybody across the planet, probably from every country. And if we come into a globalist system, one world government, one world currency, one world blockchain, one world money in and out, Microsoft will be right there to turn you in and get the percentage for tracking every single transaction you did. However many wallets, if you ran it through 100 wallets, they're still going to track you all the way out. That's where this thing goes. This is a little scary, I mean, they got all these patents granted already through the trademark office to come and do this. This Ledger Independent Token Service scares me a little bit, because it's not government getting in the middle of it, because that was everybody's biggest concern. Oh, the government wants to regulate. Oh, the government wants to get in. The government's going to do this, that, and the other on the blockchain. I don't care. The U.S. government's so inept, they couldn't do half any. Those guys don't even understand 1/5 of 1/8 of pretty much what crypto is, except for a few guys at the CFTC and a couple guys at the IRS, or girls. Everybody else there just has no clue. It's way over their heads tech-wise, and to track and trace everything on the blockchain. But then this is like a subcontractor for the IRS here, Microsoft, acting because they understand it all. So it's not about the government anymore. It's about private companies acting on behalf of the government to get the tax revenue out by following every transaction. We are in dystopia. We're beyond dystopia 101. We're like in a dystopia 301 class now.
Definitely. You know, and I was thinking, you know, when you merge these ideas of, you know, the government having one kind of entity, you kind of see it in these things like China hacking Microsoft there. And I was reading the article, and it sounds like it's not that big a deal. It's just an article about, you know, China hacking Microsoft. But when you get into the meat of the article, it talks about how financial institutions and blockchains and all of these things are kind of open to China to manipulate in Microsoft. But don't worry about it, because the federal government is going to put all kinds of patches in their software. You know, and I'm thinking, I don't really understand what patches they're putting in to stop what exactly in the cybercrime that they're talking about. But I do know that it's, you know, pretty common for governments to put backdoors into different things. And you think about, they're openly admitting that the government has the ability to go into Microsoft and put all kinds of patches in that keep track of things and, you know, keep everything safe for everyone. But it seems like that just plays right into what you were saying, that they already have patents and programs ready to, you know, kind of report you for being able to do things around their dollar system or whatever they're wanting you to be a central part of their stuff. You can't go around it, or these mega corporations will, you know, snitch on you, basically. And we've already seen it in the past where they've tried to get into this through intellectual property, where they will send you mean emails and stuff that pretty much admit that the internet service provider is spying on you and everything that you do. And it's just multi-layers of spying for these companies. And it's all just to control every little decision you make from your money. And it's just scary, like you said, to the idea that this group of people may, you know, make money off of the fact that they're pointing you in the direction of the government. And then we've already seen governments around the world use this information to target specific people. So you can see that they are literally picking winners and users, and you couldn't explain it any more than Mussolini's idea of a fascist state, of the merger of corporation and government, where even in the tech world, you've got all of these little programmers and hackers getting into everything. And just think about all of the back doors that they put. If they're doing these patches, they're probably doing other things in other aspects of human behavior.
Yeah, and as you were talking there, I pulled up the patent for this new implementation, so you can create an independent token on the network, which Microsoft will have its fingers in too. I didn't even see that in the article. That was buried in the patent right here. So those of you who are looking for that patent, it's patent 11,102,003. So it's 11,102,003. That's the patent number itself, and the person is John Marley Gray, filed on August 24th, and the application number is 16/284-4410. So anything that's going to be created on Ledger Network or a new token, see, that's the thing. You know, I'm going to dovetail to what you said, because reading into this patent here, I was reading the second paragraph when you were talking. If you're going to create a new token now, it's going to be under the server and the service to retrieve from Microsoft when you create new tokens. So if you're going to create a token on a distributed ledger network on a DLT, which is what Ripple is, or RippleNet, Microsoft is going to be in the middle of that. So it looks like Microsoft has just swooped all distributed ledger technology networks that use an independent network. Let's say you're going to create your own token ransom, and you're going to you want to run DLT on that instant settlement on the distributed ledger. I think it settles it once every 4 seconds. Microsoft is now going to be in the middle of it. So it looks like the independents who are going to go outside with distributed ledger are no longer going to be able to do that, because Microsoft suddenly holds the patent for anything coming up with new distributed ledger protocols, codes, tokens, coins made on that. Now Microsoft is in the middle of it suddenly. That's crazy. They just overtook the DLT network in a fashion by putting the protocol and stamping themselves in the middle of it. That's what I was talking about, that cross-chain swap there.
So
RippleNet will be happy. I mean, the RippleNet is an exact example of that, but others are coming out to try to do DLT with proof of time. And there's some new networks coming out too that are a little bit faster. DLT is more like business to business, sovereign settlements. It's kind of, think of it as a large accounting book that just settles every 4 seconds across the planet. Instant liquidity. So there'll be no more repo market where RippleNet will be able to give you dollar denominated stable coins as instant liquidity, but it'll be settled again on the ledger network. Unbelievable. See, crypto just got hijacked today by Microsoft is basically what happened.
Yeah, and if you think that they're doing it with just crypto, it's like I sent you an article here. It's talking about how Apple, Google, Samsung, and I'm sure Microsoft as well are adding these passport wallet functions, kind of on the same idea as like when you store your cryptocurrency. But this will be proof of, you know, all of the times that you were a good boy or a little girl and followed the edicts of, you know, what's being pushed on you. And then it's obvious for any person to see, even if they're not tech savvy, that all of these things are going to coalesce into one kind of passport. That's why we're being pushed this idea of a, you know, first it was the universal ID. They couldn't really get that in everywhere, so they started tracking products. They find out where everybody's at, and then, you know, examples of people, you know, overturning their own ethics and morals and ideas, and in order to use the networks, to have their cell phones or whatever. So it's easy to see that the vast majority of the public are going to not even question these new moves by the tech giants or any of this. They're just going to go lock and step and start behaving, you know, kind of in a robotic fashion, where you go everywhere, you get everything updated and checked everywhere you go, from your financial status, whether or not you've been a good boy or girl, your health status. And you can see the separation of two classes of society very easily. It's not hard to see that. And like you said, we've gone through these same cycles, but this is on a technological basis that's a marvel and has never been done, where we're going to be able to keep track of every single individual. There will be no black markets because all of the money will be tracked. And I know you've heard this over and over again, but we've stumbled into the time where we're seeing it in real time. You know, these little things are, these algorithms check to see if you have funds instantly, and you can convert currency instantly. That's exactly how fast they can turn you off as a citizen, with the same kind of lightning speed over the internet, and just put you on a list and make it where you can't buy food, have medical care, travel. All of these things you would think were all made up things only a year ago, but here we are. They're all reality. So where do we go? Do we just stop, you know, paying attention? Do we turn into that anomaly on their CCTV cameras and stuff? It's that one guy that's out there with no cell phone, with no technology, you know, and their face isn't being recognized because they're camouflaged in the sea of masks. It won't even be like that, because they're locking down everything to where if you just go out and try to find your own path in life, you stick out compared to the rest of the sheep. What a scary time to live in. Where do we go? I mean, it seems like technology is the only way to block the technology, fighting fire with fire. And I know that there's lots of people out there coming up with ingenious ways to change things and make things private, but at the same speed, they have millions and billions and trillions of dollars to fight the general public in this aspect. And it's getting to where all the loopholes are being closed up.
Yeah, I saw a Drudge Report today where they're trying to now link your bank cards with your vax status.
Yeah.
Again, the wallet function that you're referencing here with Apple, Google, and Samsung as something on your phone, but they're already taking it past your phone into the banking realm, where on your credit card, on that chip, on that secure chip, I forget the type of chip it is, but they're going to be putting the Vax passport in there. So imagine one day if they link that where you won't be able to use that card if you're not got the medicine. Like they'll be able to, okay, well, it won't work because you're not updated in the medicine. So your ATM, your debit, or your credit card won't work because they have to both be up to date. And that's the direction the article was insinuating that it was going to go. Not there yet, but they're already on that same fast track within the next 2 months or so before the end of the year to have those two linked. I'm like, wait a second, is this going to be like a terms of service update where if you want to have a credit card, you have to click that box yes, that you have to allow your medical records to be synthesized into that bank card chip at the same time? And if you don't, they'll say, well, then you can't get a credit card. You can't have an ATM card. You can't have a debit card. You have to check yes or else you can't get the card. You know, I think it's going something like that direction. I can already see it. And what if you're in Coinbase and you've been in a American citizen, you got your passport, everything registered, you can come in out on Coinbase, you can send the money to your bank account, but what if the same thing there? Oh, you can't access online banking until, you show proof that you've gotten the newest updated meds.
Yeah, absolutely. And I was watching this thing about Klaus Schwab talking about part of the Great Reset will be watching every individual, and then he referenced some technology, and then a bunch of articles popped up of the companies that are doing this, which are using the CCTV cameras and the 5G network to pinpoint someone's heartbeat that's as unique as your gait when you walk, or as unique as your facial recognition or your fingerprints or anything. So they'll even know when people are trying to get around the system, they'll identify them as someone that doesn't have, maybe they don't have their phone in their pocket with all these digital wallets that prove everything about who they are. And imagine the black market that will open up a fake digital proof of things, fake digital proof. We already do it kind of with citizenship and travel papers for a long time. Now it'll be completely on its head technologically, where you're trying to prove that you're a good person and that you're the person that you are, and that all of your social credit things are up to date, your vaccines are up to date, your cryptocurrency hasn't violated anybody's local laws. You know how they've over and over again tries to use these global governance rules and then have people in local governments try to enforce them, even though they're against the country or state's laws that they're in. I've seen this happen over and over again, where cities and municipalities try to push global initiatives. And then you have the fact that all the moms and pops stores, from hardware to food, have all been kind of closed down, or their wealth has been transferred, and we're only going to have the choice of this Demolition Man style, go, do you want a crispy taco? Well, you better be up to date on everything.
Yeah, if that's a direction it's going to be taken, because, I bought a generator the other day and was looking at a couple others, and those Honda generators, there's even on the big side, written on the side, not for sale in California. So even what's available in your own local jurisdiction in terms of even something so mundane as a generator, not available in some jurisdictions, and it's written on the side of the box. So well, not available in Tennessee, not available here, not available there. So they start breaking down regionally where certain goods and items can be sold or bought, and then not available in other regions. And we see that already. California has its own laws about, even when I bought some gas cans, they had those stupid California nozzles on them, which I stripped off, and then I had to order some new ones on Amazon to get the old ones like we had. And there I go. I'm on Amazon because I couldn't find those screw-on, nozzles where you could pour gasoline straight into your tank on the lawnmower, for example. Because those California things, you got to pull them back, and they drip everywhere. I waste more gas out of those supposedly California super safe whatever. I spill more gas on me that I could light myself on fire than having the thing completely open, pouring it in on a funnel. So things that are mandated, and like how things swept across the world, the EU thing with the websites was only for the EU, so you got to check all those boxes. Yes, I agree to have my data tracked, etc. That was only an EU mandate thing, but then look how it went across the globe. And then here in America with the gas cans, I'm using a simple example, but now every gas can that's manufactured across America needs to adhere to California's strict standards, but 49 other states don't have that same standard, but they need to build for the one state. So you're going to start to see a lot of this moving forward, is where it's available, where it's not available, what you can buy, and how the supply chains are going to function. I am just really curious, when we go into a hyperinflation event, like, where are things going to come from? How are we going to be able to purchase things? And then again, who's going to be in line to get these things? And, if you have everything in your wallet and ready to go, I mean, how are you going to come out of, there's just a lot of questions. And there, I'm going to disagree with you, Ransom. I think there will always be a black market. Gold and silver will allow you to always function in a black market, period.
Yeah. No, I do agree with that, but I was kind of talking about black markets as far as global exchange of stuff, like being able to order stuff from places.
Oh, yeah,
like
pay
them
Bay
privately. Yeah, well, you can pay people privately with cryptocurrency, and really no one can know about it if you do it right. Those things will be shut off if they're controlling every aspect of the internet through your phone and other things, where they'll spot you out, like you were saying. You'll have people at Microsoft or other places kind of tipping the authorities about your transaction that went around their rules. That's kind of what I was talking about, but I totally agree. There will always be a black market as far as trading real goods in person. And I was just thinking that while you were talking, with all of these rules and things, and I was thinking, how would I survive if I don't have any of these passports, wallets, etc.? Well, they can't really, at this point right now, at least, stop me from going outside and cutting a couple squash and some tomatoes and making a little stew on a small fire. If it gets to that point, hopefully people have woken up to the point. And, now that I'm not on YouTube, I know that you're not allowed to cuss on Freedom Slip, so I'm not going to cuss or anything like that. But I would like to bring up a topic that I can't bring up on YouTube because of the rules there. And that is that I think that the reason that societies are succumbing to tyranny and draconian stuff is the example of, you will always see politicians get up when anything ever happens and say that they don't condone violence. Well, that's kind of a lie, especially if you're an American, because from our very start, like from the revolution, we condone violence in everything we did. From the revolution to today, when we allow police to do things, we go to war. There's so many examples of how our society does indeed condone violence. The thing is that they got rid of that so that no one could ever say they condone things. But we've always, as a nation, condoned, defense of oneself or defense of a country. And we've condoned violence to protect ourselves from tyranny, from all kinds of things, from your local house as an intruder there, or to the big scale of bankers. And that's what we stopped doing as a nation and as a world, really, as people, is we stopped condoning violence when it comes to protecting oneself and one's private property and one's pursuit of happiness. And you can see that all around the world. Everybody wants to be politically correct, where, they'll just keep saying, well, I don't want to be the bad guy. I don't want to be the bad guy, until they let bullies trample them completely to where they have nothing. And then at that point, it's too late to ever condone any kind of action to protect yourself.
Yeah, and how many chapters in history? No, really, how many chapters in history have you seen where people were not in action in any way, shape, or form, even getting on the street in a non-violent way of just saying no before it was too late, and then the entire scales had tipped over where you had a brick wall fall on you and then by that point it's too difficult to get back up, and then the society is completely ripped apart and then restructured some decades later. And it just seems to be the standard MO of the elitists and globalists that have been pulling us along through these centuries and millennia of the same thing. They're using the exact same playbook for the last 4,000 to 5,000 years. And they just count on people's acquiescence to demands. And then, this whole thing, just wait on the plan, everything's going to happen. And they've gotten everybody into believing that there's some kind of savior force out there that just wait on, it's coming, don't do anything, it's coming. Even passive resistance, don't do anything because it's coming, just wait. You don't even need to sit out there and have a picnic in the park with 10,000 other people. It's coming, wait, there's going to be something next week. It's always the next week, oh, for sure next month, oh, this and that. like the way the media feeds and the propaganda now, it is complete submission and zero action. Even sitting in a park peacefully with 10,000 or 100,000 is considered a revolutionary act, discouraged on all levels, even from alternative media. And it seems like the alternative media has been co-opted quite a bit as well. Because you know that site that we post our stuff on there, Ransom, before it's news.com?
Yeah.
Originally, that site was purely independent stories, and it was a pretty cool site. There was a lot of really what I would consider alternative, news and viewpoints in there. But if you've looked at it over the last 6 months, it's always the same 6 or 8 players that keep rolling up that stay on the top most popular board. And it's always the same ones. They just popped out of nowhere with an instant following, popped out of nowhere as if they were already pre-stationed as an asset to push that kind of information flow to the people looking for alternative answers. Because you can't tell me that all these same people keep getting on the most popular thing again and again and again, coming out of nowhere, and it's always the same 4 or 5 with the same stories about this. They're almost like the mainstream media following with the same intel that they keep coming out as. Again, it's a regurgitated intel off 4 or 5 different names and faces on the alternatives. And I'm not talking about David Icke and Steve Quayle and all these other guys. We're talking about the brand new ones that have popped out in the last, say, year or so, that went from zero to absolute superstars in the alternatives. The same way that, the mainstream media regurgitates their stories. You could read 50 different news sites and they all have the same exact 50, they have the same exact headlines, same exact stories. It's a little infuriating because for me, I need to search the news every day to try to find new angles, new ideas for, climate research and how food prices are rising and how politics intermingles with that. But when I go, I don't care if I'm going to Al Jazeera or if I'm going to New York Times or Guardian. I don't care where you go, what continent. They all have the exact same headlines. Exactly. There's hardly any investigative, real journalism going on anymore. And now I'm finding the same creep is heading right over into alternative media, where it's the same 3 or 4 faces saying the same intel, regurgitating the same story. It's exactly the same it's so sinister the way that the alternative media information flow has been corrupted and co-opted as well to put out a certain message of just wait. There's another plan that's going to come back. Somebody's coming back, another plan. There's just hold on and wait. Don't do anything. Hold on and wait.
Yeah.
And I think it's, I think they're assets myself, but that's why I didn't mention any names.
Yeah, absolutely. I agree with you. And I've found the same thing when, you're comparing headlines. You seem to get stuck in this, use it for an example. You have to be either an earth is round person or an earth is flat person. The guy that walks up and says, well, it's more like a potato shape if we're using facts, will be attacked by both sides, or they won't even be allowed to talk. And I do find that amazing that there are certain personalities that I know personally that started out at the same time I did, but they picked more of a one side or the other approach to saying some of the same things I say. And some of those people are quite big now, and they don't get turned off. And now I have an email from YouTube telling me that the reason I was turned off was for medical misinformation, which I didn't give any I didn't give any medical advice or information. All I did is mention the Japanese guy. I think that's what it was, and that's exactly the point I was making. That if you mention something that's actually helpful that neither side is telling you, for some reason, that's where it gets attacked. That's where it gets shut down, is the third opinion, or even the idea that you should think about things for yourself and take both sides of something and see that there's something that both sides are living out. And I've been finding that a lot on the alternative media, that they are stuck on the same topics with the same opinion. And it's a narrative of being steered one side or the other, that you have to be on one side or the other, or you're not controllable. And that's what's going on. So if you've been feeling like I have, if you look at the news, it's like a repeat. Like I get on a week later. Yes, it's escalated a little bit as far as the craziness, but basically it's the same topics. They never let you veer off of these topics. Like you'll never have 5 channels of mainstream media and alternative media showing you how to grow a garden and which plants will give you medications. where you can go around the pharmaceutical industry, because there are lots of plants that you can do things to get the same exact compounds that they're selling you from the pharmaceutical level, except for those companies will start rationing or telling you that you can't have this or the other thing, and or maybe it's you're just a bad person because only racist people are believing certain information, and that's why they're trying to use certain resources. And it's really horrible to me, because I'm trying not to censor myself, but I've got to where I talk in a new way now, because depending on what group you're in, you can't say one thing or another, because they go so extreme, and they'll never listen to a third opinion or a third angle, or even just revert to the way it used to be, where a fact was a fact, whether you were on one side of an idea or another. 2 + 2 still equaled 4. So I think that's a major thing whenever they push this Common Core thing, telling people that 2 and 2 doesn't actually equal 4. If you did the math right, it could equal 5, so we don't hurt anybody's feelings. And that was just the beginning of getting people to accept that fiction is reality, and that they get to tell you what fiction, what reality is, and you have to accept the fiction, or you'll be, pointed out. And it's really bizarre. I know there's a bunch of old Twilight Zones that were about one topic or another where they did that, where it's just the one person that doesn't fit in that gets ostracized, and that happens to be the people that are making the most sense nowadays.
Well, that all depends on what the word is, my friend. You ellipsoid earth believer. You can't believe that it's round or flat. You ellipsoid. Yeah, I see. I want to talk about ivermectin for a second, because we're not on YouTube anymore, and I can actually use that full word now.
Yeah.
I live out in the countryside, and a lot of guys out here have horses, and ivermectin is super, super, super common, because everybody's deworming their horses. They're going out their whole season in the pasture, and they're nibbling on everything. Chiggers everywhere, ticks, all kind of worms and slugs and all kind of stuff all over the plants, worms, and there are definitely and boticides are just widely used in the farming community out here. So I was watching a friend of mine. He likes to get this one apple flavored one, and it's called Durvet. And the ivermectin paste that all the guys are using on horses out here are 1.87%. They're not going. There's a couple other ones that have a couple different dewormers in it, but I was told that this one here, just straight up 1.87% paste, was the best one to use for the horses. Now, another thing that I was noticing when they were using it for the horses, the plunger there, when it's marked off by the pounds, like a 250-pound mark, 500-pound mark, all the way up to 1,250 pounds, which is a single dose for a horse. Like there's a little bit extra in the tube, because not all horses are 1,250 pounds. Some are 1,400, 1,500. So they put a little bit extra in there for maximum horse weight. But with my friends, their horses are rated exactly at 1,250. So what they do is they push that plunger down to get it to that first mark, because they were finding, even with a couple of the smaller horses that they had out there, that even when they were 250 pounds, if they would just push it straight out to 250, the horse would get a little sick, because there was one full dose too much for the horse inside there. There was an extra 100 pounds of dosage on that for the horses. So I'm learning quite a bit about these guys out in the pastures, because right now is the time when everybody's doing it. And another factoid that I learned is these little pens of ivermectin paste used to be $3, and the price has gone up to $12 to $15 for a single one. So all the guys are just complaining and moaning out here about how much their medicine costs for the horses has gone up. But the apple flavor, and a lot of times, if you chew on this stuff, it's super, super oily, and the horses don't like that either. That's why they say, try to get the horse's mouth and then close it and then squeeze it in. And it's supposed to stick to the tongue so they can't spit it out. So a lot of guys out here also are putting it on bread, so then animals can consume it a little bit more easily. And remember, that first plunge, you got to get rid of that first over extra there. That's straight from the farming community. Not medical advice, but I'm just telling you, because it's such a popular subject right now. And this is what's going on in the countryside. And the cows, price of beef's all up here. Signing off.
Revolution Radio.
What the heck is the Truth Jihad? Hey, I'm Kevin Barrett, host of Truth Jihad Radio. Federal prosecutors, Department of Homeland Security agents,